It was a regular Tuesday morning in San Francisco when Blake Harrison, the new CEO of a thriving tech company, decided to take an informal walk around the company's headquarters. Having just taken over leadership a few weeks ago, Blake wanted to get a sense of the daily operations and observe how the workplace functioned outside of board meetings and scheduled reports. He believed in leading from the ground up, and that meant seeing things with his own eyes. As he strolled through the polished lobby, he noticed a small group of foreign interns standing near the information desk. They looked confused, glancing at a map and talking rapidly among themselves. Nobody nearby seemed to understand them, until a janitor in a blue uniform approached with a mop in hand, offering a gentle smile and a few words. At first, Blake didn't pay much attention. Then he noticed something odd. The janitor was speaking fluent French. Blake paused mid-step, intrigued. He watched as the janitor seamlessly switched from French to German, gesturing politely to the interns and pointing them in the right direction. The group's expressions shifted from anxious to relieved. One of them asked a question in Mandarin, and without hesitation, the janitor responded in fluent Mandarin Chinese, adjusting his tone and intonation as though he'd grown up in Beijing. Blake blinked, uncertain if what he was seeing was real. He moved a bit closer, pretending to study the company artwork on the wall, just to listen. The janitor wasn't just translating, he was communicating deeply and naturally. Another intern spoke up in Russian, and again the janitor replied with ease. Then came Arabic, and then Japanese. By the time the janitor responded in Portuguese and Swahili, Blake's curiosity had turned into pure amazement. This man, who quietly mopped floors and emptied trash cans, was fluently speaking 9 languages like it was nothing. After the interns thanked the janitor profusely and headed off, Blake walked directly up to him. "Excuse me," he said, his voice friendly but curious. "That was incredible. How many languages do you speak?" The janitor looked a bit embarrassed, clutching the handle of his mop. 9, sir," he said modestly, with a thick but clear American accent. Blake was stunned. 9, he repeated, genuinely shocked. "How?" The janitor gave a small shrug. "I grew up in a multilingual family. My parents moved a lot, Africa, Europe, Asia. I picked up languages along the way. Later, I studied on my own. I enjoy it." Blake looked him over. His uniform slightly faded, his shoes scuffed, yet he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew his value. It baffled Blake to think this man wasn't sitting in an executive meeting, but rather mopping the floors of the building. Trying to make sense of it, Blake asked the question lingering in his mind. "Why are you working as a janitor?" There was no judgment in his voice, only genuine curiosity. The janitor gave a small smile, as if he'd been asked that question before. "When I moved to the US, my degrees didn't transfer. My certifications weren't recognized here. I applied for a lot of jobs, but no one wanted to take a chance. I had bills to pay and a family to support, so I took the first job that would hire me. That was 10 years ago. Been here ever since." There was no bitterness in his tone, just calm acceptance. Blake didn't know what to say. Here stood a man of remarkable intelligence and cultural fluency, quietly overlooked by the system. He'd probably walked past him a dozen times without ever noticing. And yet, this same janitor had just helped the company's international interns feel welcomed and understood. Something no translator app could have done so warmly. Blake stood silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of it all. His eyes drifted toward the interns, now confidently heading toward the elevators, thanks to the janitor's guidance. He turned back to the man in blue, seeing him not as a cleaner, but as a hidden asset. "What's your name?" he asked. "Carlos," the janitor replied. Blake extended his hand and shook his firmly. "Carlos, thank you. You've just reminded me that talent doesn't always wear a suit or sit behind a desk." Carlos nodded politely, unsure where the conversation would go. But Blake had already made up his mind, though he didn't say anything further in that moment. He walked back to his office with purpose, already drafting a plan in his mind. Carlos had just changed more than a few interns' mornings. He'd shifted the CEO's entire perspective. The next morning, Carlos arrived at work as usual, wearing his janitor uniform and carrying his old mop and cleaning supplies. He had no idea that his life was about to change. He moved through the halls quietly, nodding to early employees and wiping down surfaces with practiced efficiency. He had done this routine for years, unnoticed by most. But today, something felt different. Just as he was about to start cleaning the 7th-floor hallway, a voice called out behind him. "Carlos!" He turned around to find Blake Harrison, the CEO, standing there with a friendly but firm expression. "Could you come with me for a moment?" Carlos hesitated. He wasn't sure what was going on. Had he done something wrong? Had helping those interns caused trouble? But Blake's tone wasn't angry, just direct. Carlos nodded, left his cart by the wall, and followed the CEO toward the elevators in silence. As the elevator doors closed, Carlos couldn't help but feel anxious. CEOs didn't normally call janitors into private meetings. Blake glanced over and noticed the concern in Carlos's face. "Don't worry, you're not in trouble," he said, offering a slight smile. "In fact, I think we've been missing something important here. Something you have." They exited on the executive floor, a place Carlos had only seen once when he was cleaning during off hours. Blake led him into a glass-walled meeting room overlooking the city. Inside was a table, a laptop, and 2 cups of coffee already waiting. "Please have a seat," Blake offered. Carlos sat carefully, still unsure why he was here. Blake took a sip of his coffee and got right to the point. "Carlos, yesterday I saw you speak 9 languages like it was nothing. That's not something you see every day. I realized we've had a rare asset walking our halls unnoticed." Carlos blinked, unsure how to respond. "I've just always loved languages," he said quietly. "It helps me connect with people, especially those who feel lost." Blake nodded. "Exactly. We're expanding into international markets. Europe, Asia, Africa, South America. We've got the tech, the money, and the data, but what we lack is real human understanding. Someone who can speak to people in their own language, not just translate words, but build trust." Carlos leaned back, surprised. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. "Are you offering me a job?" he asked cautiously. Blake smiled. "I'm offering you a position on our international relations team. At first, as a cultural liaison and interpreter. If it goes well, we can talk about training, travel, and leadership roles." Carlos was stunned. He had dreamed of something like this long ago, but life had pushed those dreams aside. "I don't have the formal qualifications," Carlos said after a pause. "No business degree, no official certificates." Blake nodded. "I know. But talent doesn't always follow a traditional path. What you have can't be taught in a classroom. And I trust my own eyes more than a resume. Besides, we'll get you the training you need. All I ask is that you bring the same passion to this new role that you brought to your janitor duties." Carlos felt a lump in his throat. For years, he had worked in the background, doing his job with quiet dignity. He never asked for recognition. But now, someone had finally seen him, really seen him. "I'll do my best," he said softly. Blake stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Carlos." They shook hands, and for the first time in years, Carlos felt like he was stepping into a future he thought had passed him by. Word spread quickly through the company. People who had once passed Carlos in the hallway without a second glance now stopped to greet him. Some congratulated him, others apologized for not noticing his talents earlier, but Carlos didn't dwell on the past. He threw himself into his new role, learning company policies, working with regional teams, and helping international employees feel at home. He became more than a translator. He became a bridge. Interns from across the globe would seek him out, not just for help with language, but for advice on navigating a new culture. His desk was always open, his smile always ready. The same hands that had once pushed a mop now held global conference calls and drafted communication strategies in multiple languages. His journey had shifted not because of luck, but because his quiet excellence had finally been noticed and valued. Months later, at a major company event, Blake took the stage to give a speech. He spoke about innovation, global vision, and the importance of inclusion. Then he paused and looked toward the crowd. "There's someone here who taught me a lesson I'll never forget," he said. "Know that sometimes the greatest minds don't sit in corner offices. Sometimes they sweep the floors." The spotlight turned, and Carlos, dressed in a smart blazer with a translation headset around his neck, looked up from his table, stunned. The audience erupted in applause. Carlos stood slowly, humbled but proud. His eyes scanned the room, filled with people from every continent. In that moment, he knew he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was proof that talent, when given a chance, could rise from anywhere and change everything.